Jai Baba. My name is Philip Creager, and I'm going to tell the story of how Baba came to me. About 5 years ago in India, I was asked to give a talk about Mani and Mara stories, and it morphed into my telling my story upon request spontaneously. So the story exists online already. Unfortunately, there are some difficulties with it. It's misidentified as my talking about hidden secrets from the Bible, which I wasn't talking about at all. And what else? So there were sound difficulties with it and some other things. So that's why I'm retelling it here today. And apologies for my voice, it's a little raspy today. I thought before I begin with the story proper, I'd share a little bit of personal background information. And after the sharing, just a little bit of follow-up post coming to Baba stuff. So I grew up in a family of 6. My mother was a school teacher for the first couple of years. Then she busied herself with taking care of us children, which was her real calling. My father had 2 full-time jobs. He was a workaholic type, interesting man. He was a full-time professor, the head of the religion department in a college, and he also was the minister of the church, which was next door. There's a college dorm next door on the other side. I enjoyed the little college town where I grew up, outside of Philadelphia, and nothing particularly startling about my religious or spiritual interest growing up, other than there was this sort of unarticulated feeling of a certain presence. And not very often, but every once in a while throughout my childhood, I was aware of it. Later, as an adult, I was able to identify it as Baba's presence. So another interesting thing was that my mother said that I would spend a long time on my prayers. And it was the traditional kneeling by the side of the bed with the hands folded. I don't remember much about that. I do remember I had this little habit that I just kept secret where I used to make my mind blank and see if I could do that and for how long could I do it. But basically I was interested in sports and nature, things like that. By the age of 12, I started to identify God with the church, which I was having trouble relating to. And that morphed into, when I was in college, being an agnostic. And that's not uncommon for people. When I went away to college, being into sports, I decided to major in physical education. I ended up, though, doing my field work in psychology and moving into that field. But I worked in both fields for some time. I was actually a wrestler. Now, in my present state, I couldn't wrestle my way out of a wet paper bag, but it meant more to me than anything else for a period of time. And this ended up being my initial approach to Baba. I'll get to that in a little while. But back in 1970, while I was working as a social worker in the Springfield, Massachusetts Welfare Department, I got either a postcard or a letter from a friend of mine who I had gone to college with. He was behind me in college. At this time, he was traveling around the world, and he wrote me that Mayor Baba said, "Don't worry, be happy." And this had a marked effect on me. And it wasn't so much what he said as that feeling of a presence again. And then he came back and he said that he had been on a train station platform and he had met some followers of Mayor Baba, and they told him a little bit about Baba, including that he had kept silent for 20 years, so he got that a little wrong. And that impressed me, but I wasn't that impressed, and I didn't follow up on it. But what happened also in 1970 is my agnostic stance changed. And there were two things that motivated that change. One was I had a girlfriend, and I would tease her about needing a crutch and relying on God. And one day I was talking about a couple of people who had really influenced me in my life, a college professor, my weightlifting trainer. And I said, "How about you?" And she said, "No person, God." And somehow something began to change. I couldn't kind of deny that. And then we had a split. We broke up. Later we became friends years later. But that kind of motivated me to look a little deeper into things like God. The other thing that happened in 1970, that's when I first heard of Baba. That's when this thing happened with the girlfriend. I took a psychedelic substance and realized there's something beyond this world that we know about. Now, I probably won't read it, but I'll just show this pamphlet that I came across in 1970. What happened is I quit my job as a social worker. I was there from 1969 to 1971. I had permanent civil service status, so if I decided that I wanted to resume working as a social worker in the state of Massachusetts, I could be put at the top of the list for 2 years period of time. Anyway, so I quit my job. I was stressed out. I had a caseload of 130 families. The state legal maximum was 60. So it was home visits, determining budgets, just everything, really stressed out. And I left and sold my car and sold some of my possessions, stored some of them away at my parents' house, bought a backpack, a tent, a sleeping bag, hiking boots, and took off hitchhiking around the United States, which I did for 2.5 months, never staying anywhere more than a week, and it was the time of my life. It was really wonderful. And this was 1971 now, and I bring this up because while I was hitchhiking, I went into this little store and they had the free pamphlets, the one that I just showed. Not the actual copy, this is another copy of the same pamphlet. And I'm reading about Baba, and Baba is saying, for a few sincere seekers, the taking of psychedelic drugs can lead them toward me, but to continue taking it is a big mistake. So I was one of those souls that it helped open up a gateway to God. I did continue to make some big mistakes in that regard, but Baba protected me. So let's see, from there we go to, so I didn't work for a full year. After my 2.5 months, I just crashed here and there with friends and living that lifestyle. And I lived on $1,400 and some dollars. And I thought I was never going to work again. Of course, I was naive and young. So let me skip to about once a year I'd come across Meher Baba, and but then I would ignore him in my spiritual search. And one day I'm talking to my friend Carl Miller, and he was a psychology kind of guy too, so what he had to say made a lot of sense to me, unfortunately. And what he said was, he had read some about Meher Baba, and Baba had been, when he was a teenager, kissed on the forehead by this saint. Of course, we know that was Babajan. And he had this deep spiritual experience afterwards, but he was kind of like a zombie for years. And he mistook, according to my friend, he felt he mistook his spiritual experience for thinking that he was God, because he had skipped a key part of his adolescence, being in a zombie state. And I remember we were in a Friendly's restaurant. I pounded the counter and I said, now I can close the book on Meher Baba. So Baba's game, Baba's sense of humor, and thank God he didn't close the book on me. So meanwhile, in the early to mid-70s, I'm feeling God's presence more and more. And meanwhile, I'm studiously avoiding anything about Mayor Baba. I'd be in a bookstore, and what's this book? Oh, Mayor Baba, put it back on the shelf. But by 1975, a big change happened. And I had another girlfriend, and we broke up. And I decided, okay, I'm doing a lot of different things, and I'm going to make spirituality my number one thing, not finding the next girlfriend. So I made all these changes all at once. I feel I had more ability to do that kind of thing back then than I do now. But I stopped taking any illicit drugs. I didn't take them for very long. There was really a 9-month period where it was pot and some psychedelics. I would seek God first. I would stop taking Tums and Pepto-Bismol every day. The Tums for the reflux, the Pepto-Bismol for the upset stomach. I would change to a vegetarian diet. And I guess that was about it. So I did all those things at once, and it really worked for me, actually. And I was starting to get cleared up and cleaned out. And then I started to feel, oh, I was living in this wonderful house. It was a farmhouse in Hadley, Western Massachusetts. Had an organic garden there. We were all vegetarians in the house. It was by the Connecticut River. And life was good, but this seeking of God was becoming a burning desire. And then I started to feel the pull. I felt like I was being drawn to go to India. And I said, no, that's what people do looking for gurus, and God is infinite and formless. He can't be in human form. That was my thinking. But I was pretty adamant about it. So, but what happened is it got stronger and stronger. But then I thought, okay, so I'll either go to India and see what happens, or I will buy some wood stoves. Go figure. Well, I figured they were a good investment because the price would go up year after year, and I needed money. I was only working 20 hours a week at the time. So I ran this by a friend of mine named Bob Wax. And let's see what his opinion is. And he said, well, I've thought about it, and I think you should buy the wood stoves and not go to India. As soon as he said that, it's like, no, that's not right. I need to go to India. Strange are the ways of the Lord, But anyway, but I didn't have the money, and I wasn't into finding a guru. So what's happening with all that? But it got stronger and stronger. And then one day, and I felt like this had been building for a long, long time, I felt like, excuse me, I get emotional about this, but I felt like, I tried meditations and Buddhist this and that and read all these books. And I thought, I'll do what I used to do as a little kid. And I'll get on my knees by my bed and fold my hands and pray to God to come to me. So that's what I did. Except I didn't go by the side of the bed. I got on top of the bed and kneeled on the bed, and from the bottom of my heart asked God to come to me. So now mind you, I didn't know about avatars. I knew very little about Baba because I was avoiding him. And but on my 4 walls I had a picture of Islamic spiritual art that I loved. Of course, in Islam they don't have pictures of the Prophet by and large. I had a picture of Lord Ram. I had a picture of Buddha. And I had a picture of Jesus. So I prayed, and I fully expected an answer, and nothing happened. So I broke down sobbing, And all of a sudden I caught myself. I'm sure now in hindsight it was Baba that caught me. I said, wait a minute. He will answer you. You expected an answer right now. It'll be in his time. And then the thing about going to India really took off. And it changed to, I'm going to see God, and I meant to go to India until I'll go to India and God will guide me. So I told this to one of my housemates. Well, that was a bit much. And I realized I need to give people a more palatable answer. So I started telling people, well, India is a spiritual country, I have spiritual interests, so I'm just going to go and explore. And they could accept that better. But I didn't have the money to go. My 20-hour-a-week job became 50-something hours and then 70 hours, and I traveled 38 miles round trip to work. And before you know it, I had nearly enough money for a long stay. I got a 4-month leave of absence from my job. I cashed in a life insurance policy my parents took out of me when I was a baby, got another $200-something. Before you know it, I'm in the Bombay airport. And this isn't the current Bombay airport. It's not the one before. It's the one before the one before. And, I've been around. I've hitchhiked around the U.S. I've been to Europe. I'm a free spirit. I'm independent. I didn't think I would freak out, but I freaked out. I'm in the airport and I haven't slept for a couple of days, maybe half an hour on the plane or something. And there's people pressed up against the glass, and God's going to guide me, but I wasn't expecting this, And also, this official in the airport came up, and he said, give me your thing. It's the thing that you have to sign declaring what you're bringing into the country, how much money you have, all that kind of thing. I'll be right back with it. And he never came back. And you need that to hand that to the person at the door to leave the airport and get out there into India. So I'm freaked out because the guy didn't come back, and I'm freaked out, and it's like the people pressed against the glass, and I thought, I'm going to go back home. Then I realized that the ticket I had bought stipulated that you had to stay for at least 2 weeks, otherwise you had to pay some big amount more. So I didn't know what to do. And all of a sudden this woman comes up to me, a Western woman from Nantucket, and she said, hi, my husband's over here, would you like to come into town with us? And I said, oh yes, I would like to. And I don't know what happened with that thing you needed to get out, but we got out. And they would come from Nantucket to buy things in India for their little store back home. And he told me, he said, I saw you and you looked so confused. And you were walking around in little circles, and I knew I had to help you. So I sent my wife over to come and fetch you. I'm sure glad they did. We get on the ST bus out in the airport. It's still dark. The sun starts to rise. I see a palm tree. We drive into town. The sun is rising. And I know other Baba lovers, some other Baba lovers have had this experience that I'm going to describe. I saw India for the first time, and I realized I was home. My spiritual home, which it remains to this day. At the same time, I'm still feeling paradoxically freaked out by the lack of sleep and what happened in the airport. At the same time, I'm feeling this incredibly warm, I'm home feeling. And I remember we drive into India, and there's all these bodies on the street. And I'm young, and I think dead people, poor country. But they were just sleeping outside, they're poor, And so now we're looking for a cheap place to stay, and we're going from place to place. It isn't working. We finally find a place. And they get a room, and I have a separate room. And I'm a light sleeper. I tend not to sleep all that well either. They said they pounded on the door the next day, and I didn't respond. I have it in my India journal. All my India pilgrimages, I kept diaries. It's the only time I kept diaries, except on that hitchhiking tour back in 1971. So anyway, I think it might have been like 15 and a half hours, and I got out of bed, and I'm kind of concerned because I couldn't find the room or something. Anyway, we finally hooked up with each other, and I spent the next 2 or 3 days with them in Bombay, just loving India. And they would show me the ropes, how to barter for prices, get in the place, nay, 10 rupee, things like that. And how when you're getting a train ticket, you get one for the train, and then you get in another line for your seat on the train. Of course, I was mostly going the lowest class because I wanted to get a feel for India, and I'm glad I did that. I'll just digress a little bit, tell a little train story. So I'm on the train in India, and third class, whatever it was, second class unreserved. And in India, the lower caste people will just stare at you if you're unusual, And they would feel I had long blonde hair. They'd feel and stroke my hair. They'd fall asleep on your shoulder. Anyway, so we're all sitting there, and they didn't speak any English. One man a little bit. And I remember some man came on the train, and he's selling toddlers, babies' clothes, and he throws them down on their laps, and we're all men. And they just allowed it to happen, and the guy's going, I got it. And the next train stop, he gathers them all up and he leaves. It was like a sense of entertainment for people. At one stop, there was a big commotion, and they're looking at me, and a couple of guys run off the train. They come back, they had bought me tea. And their enjoyment was to watch me drink it. So it was a fun time. And my two newfound friends from Nantucket, there used to be a ship that would go from Bombay down to Goa. And they were going down there next, and they invited me along. And I eventually did go down there on that ship, but not at that time. And I said, well, thank you so much. You've been so helpful, but I have a different agenda. And then I thought, well, exactly what is my agenda? And but I had brochures given to me by the travel agent. And one was for Ajanta Caves, and another was for Ellora Caves. So I went to Ajanta Caves, had a wonderful time there. Then I went to Ellora Caves, having a wonderful time there, but I'm starting to feel sick. Well, no one told me you're to wear hats in India when you're out, and I must have gotten heat stroke or something like that. And I remember thinking, okay, I can't do all these caves. It's really wonderful. I'm going to call it a day. I've been to a few, and then we'll see what tomorrow brings. Well, I decided, I feel like I want to go to one more cave, and then we'll see what tomorrow brings. Well, that happened to be cave number 10, the Sitting Buddha's Cave, the Carpenter Cave, the cave that Baba loved the most of the caves at Ellora and spent the most time at there. And at that time, you could sit up in the balcony. And I sat up in the balcony and I did a little meditation that I used to do that didn't really ever satisfy me, but this time it was different. I got this feeling of this presence to a certain extent and a certain serenity. And then I walked out of the cave and boing, I had a very profound spiritual experience. And my consciousness was temporarily raised. And, I'm just an ordinary Joe, so it was quite mind-blowing. And basically I felt God's presence behind me, I think over the right shoulder, but I can't remember for sure. God's presence was like a warm sun. And I just felt this incredible love. It was similar to what I experienced when I was a child. And I'm thinking, well, I thought God was going to guide me, and I'm loving India, but God hasn't really come to me yet. I must go to whatever ashram is closest to where I am tomorrow. Now, I had a book, and it listed ashrams and temples and things like that all around the world. A Pilgrim's Guide to planet Earth. And in there, it says, Meher Baba's tomb is in Ahmednagar. And it says something about Adi K. Irani. And I thought, oh, Meher Baba. But he's also the one that said drugs are bad, you know. Now, I wasn't taking any drugs, mind you. I had stopped. And let's see what the second closest place is. Rajneesh Ashram in India, who I didn't know much about. And I thought, well, he's alive, but no, I'll go to Meher Baba's place. The bus the next day was going first to Ahmednagar, stopping for 10 minutes, and then going on to Pune. So, okay, I'll go to Ahmednagar, and I'll sit in Meher Baba's tomb for 1 hour, and I'll talk to him internally. And then I guess the next day or later that day, my plan was to go to Rajneesh Ashram and talk to Rajneesh and see what he had to say, not with any intent of following him, because I didn't believe in gurus and masters, but to see what I could glean and how, whatever mysterious way that might have God come to me. So let's see. So the next day, I get on the ST bus, and it's several hours from Elora Caves to Ahmednagar, and I'm sicker from having been out in the sun. And the bus is all Indians, and there's no seat. So I'm going to have to stand the whole way, and I'm sick. So I remember I'm holding on to a pole, and there was, in addition to the driver, there was a conductor. I can picture him perfectly. And he was a gruff kind of guy. And, but he's sitting next to where I'm standing, and he says, as the bus takes off, "What is the purpose of your visit?" And I said something, well, I'm a seeker, you know. And he said, "Oh, you have come to my country for God." And this gruff man gets up and says, "Please take my seat." Not the kind of thing that's likely to happen in America. But later on, he made some poor guy get up and he sat down. But still, he was very sweet. It was wonderful. It was helpful. And I sat next to a pre-med student, and he had some pond. So I tried pond for the first time. I hated it. And then we got into Ahmednagar, and my mind started working, and I thought, okay, I was going to go to Baba's place, but he's not alive. How can he help me? So I'll just stay on the bus and go to Pune. And besides, the only kind of connection I had to India was a friend of mine was a part of the whole Rajneesh scene. I had never met this friend of a friend. And I figured I could meet him there as well. So I stayed on the bus, and the bus was supposed to go in 10 minutes, but it's India. It didn't go in 10 minutes. It didn't go in 20 minutes. Maybe half an hour later, I get off the bus. I'm sick. I'm angry that it didn't go. I'll stick with plan A. Thank God. So I get a rickshaw and tell the rickshaw driver I want to go to Meher Baba's tomb. And he says, so many rupees. And I've learned from my Nantucket friends what to do, and I say another price, we meet somewhere in the middle, and we're off. I'm a little bit proud of myself. I, negotiated this little deal. So he lets me off, and then he asks for the original price that he wanted. And we argue, and so I lost the battle, and I gave him the money, so I'm even more upset. And then he takes off, and I look around, and I don't see any tomb. And so I start walking, and it says Sarosh Canteen. Oh, that's not it. Then I start walking down the street toward where Anil the Tailor's is. And no, I don't think this feels right. I walk back, see the gate, Mayor Nazar, the trust compound in Ahmednagar, walk through and see the first Westerner I've seen in a couple of days, I think, Jacko Caraco. And I've got long blonde hair, a straggly but long beard. And he says to me, "Hi, why aren't you wearing your sandals?" And I said, because my feet are hot. I had taken them off of my hand. And he said, well, you need to wear them for health reasons, this and that. And I'm thinking, who are you, my mother? You know? But of course he was right. And I put on my sandals. And he's a real, what we used to call back then, us alternative culture people, real straight looking. But at the same time, he seemed friendly and nice. And he said, why are you here? And I said, I'm here to sit in Mayor Baba's tomb for 1 hour. And he said, it's not here. And of course he meant it was a few miles away, but I thought, with all my struggles and everything, I'm in the wrong city, you know? And my heart sank. So subconsciously I had these feelings for Baba. So he says, well, you know, you say you want to sit in Baba's tomb for 1 hour, but to get a feel for the place, you really need to stay for like 3 weeks. And he says, and he puts his arm around me, he says, let me show you around the trust compound. It's closing up and there isn't time for you to go see the tomb probably today and you're tired, you know. And I'm thinking, I sit an hour, he's put his arm around me, he's seen 3 weeks, and he's friendly, but maybe this is a cult. You know, he's trying to suck me in here. So I didn't know. Anyway, it's the end of the day at the trust for the people there. And as he's showing me around the trust, out walk these 2 older women, probably younger than I am now. I'm 72. And it was Ronald Gailey and Virginia Small. But all I saw was little old ladies literally in tennis sneakers. Oh, this is just too rich. This place isn't for me. What a knucklehead. Anyway, so then he takes me into Adi's office. And at that time, there were maybe 24 pictures of Bob on the walls. And I thought, yes, this could be a cult. You know, they seem like fanatics. Or maybe they're just childish, you know. You know, it wasn't too much longer. I was buying up pictures like candy in the candy store. But at any rate, so I'm trying to decide whether I'm going to stay overnight and go to the tomb the next day or just find a place to stay and get out of there. When I'm introduced to Peter Nordine and David Fenster. And they say, hi, we're going to eat. Would you like to come out to eat with us? Without them knowing it, I had a replay to some extent of what I experienced the day before at Allure, walking out of Allure Caves, of this presence. And I thought, and it seemed to be coming through them, but they were not aware of it. And I thought, this has something to do with Mayor Baba. I'm going to dinner with him, even though I was sick. And I made a mistake of eating, and I think on top of the heat stroke, I got food poisoning. Now, this is a good thing. You know, I've had problematic health much of my life, but bad health has served me well. And in this sense, I ended up staying at the Del Lodge, sick in bed for I think about 5 days. And so I couldn't escape. And Baba lovers would come by, and there were other Baba lovers staying at the Dalot. Peter and David would come by, and we'd talk about Baba. And I realized it wasn't a cult, and I was getting more interested. But my first night in the Dalot, I didn't know that, I thought you could always control going to the bathroom, but I found out otherwise, and it was so embarrassing because I was too weak to get to the bathroom anyway, and the servants had to clean up after me. But I thought, at least I have a place to myself, you know, I can get through this on my own. When all of a sudden someone walks in first or second night, Jay Baba! I said, what? Aren't you a Baba lover? I said, what? And meanwhile, this poor guy, it's his first trip to India. He thinks he's stuck in the room with this sick guy who's not in the Baba. And I'm thinking, I thought I had a room just to myself, and this cliche-ridden guy I'm stuck with him. We became close. It was John Grumet. What a character. Anyway, so I remember I would ask questions to the Baba lovers that would visit me, and they'd say, you should ask these questions to this man named Erich and this woman named Mani. They can answer the questions better than we can. You know, we'll do our best. And I said, no, 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 when I'm better, I'm going directly to Baba, and then I'm on my way. Thank you. But the first day I was on my feet, I was still weak, but I was over the illness. Um, Peter Nordine came by and said, okay, why don't you just come out and I'll wait for you. Everybody else had left to go to Marizad. And I'll wait for you and we'll go out together. You can go to the tomb later tonight. So I said, okay. So out we go. And the first person I meet is, before I went out, someone had said to me, do you know about the Mandali? So maybe 2 or 3 days before. And I said, what's the Mandali? And he said, that's something you'll have to experience for yourself. So I thought, maybe it's some form of initiation. So it was sometime after I met them that I'm still wondering, what's the Mandali and when am I going to experience it? And I already had and didn't know it. Oh, Baba's sense of humor. So anyway, I go out with Peter, and normally Erich and the Mandali would greet people on the veranda right in front of Mandali Hall. But on this particular time, he was out there in sort of in the dirt approach area there. And he greeted me and he said, you must be Philip. We've been hearing so much about you. Now, my story is written up in one of the early Baba books and it got edited kind of strangely, but that's exactly what he said. And all of a sudden, that presence again. Excuse me. So, I felt like I was in a fairyland. I didn't know what had hit me. So opposite the other Westerners, and back in those days it was almost all Westerners that were pilgrims, except at special times, and people that had met Baba, Indians that had met Baba. And mostly from the US and from Australia and England. And oftentimes the Mandali would outnumber the pilgrims. It's quite fortunate. So anyway, Erich said, I'm going to Mandali Hall now. I'll see you in there later. He must not have said Mandali Hall. Anyway, whatever. But here, this man will take you around and give you a tour of India. And that was Balma too. And there was just an instant connection. And in fact, Balma too in later years said a couple of times, you and I are of the same Sanskaric tribe. And I think what he meant by that is we were both thin, we both loved books, we both had chronic illnesses that began at the age of 19, things like that. You know, we were both Bible lovers. But in Erich, I remember coming back to India one time, he says, have you seen your friend yet this visit? So anyway, Bala too gives me the tour. And I don't remember exactly when I met Mani, but I remember looking into her eyes and having to look away after a split second. And that continued for the rest of that pilgrimage and for the rest of the next pilgrimage. And then Baba put enough of a veil that it was just loving and lovely looking into her eyes. But for those first 2 pilgrimages, every time I looked into her eyes, it was so deep and profound I could only look briefly. So these people are having a real effect on me. And after the little tour with Balna too, and I'm feeling that presence, and I'm at this point, my heart feels it's Baba, but my mind is fighting, trying to say, get a grip, Philip. You know. Anyway, so the door opens to Madly Hall, and I go in to hear the stories that Erich is telling, and the door creaks. And so everyone turns around to see who's there. And Erich was in the middle of some story, and they're all feeling very happy. So I get this whoosh of love. And I remember exactly where I sat. And I'm trying to say, get a grip. Philip, you're feeling like Baba is God, but he can't be, he can't be. So, my mind, I said, you know, well, God is all powerful. I haven't felt like Baba's all powerful. I'm feeling all this love, but what about the power of God? Just thinking this thought, Erich tells this story. I'm reminded of the story with Baba. It's wartime. We're on the train with Baba, and Baba wants the bogie, that particular compartment, just for him and his close ones. And but it's wartime, and soldiers can go in any compartment they want. And some of them are coming into Baba's compartment. The Mandali get up, and they start to push them out. And the soldiers actually started to raise their rifles to push in with their rifles into the compartment. All of a sudden, Baba, in complete silence, of course, he's standing on his seat, clapping, telling the Mandali, cut it out, invite them in, order tea and cookies, we're going to have a party here. Before you know it, they've got their arms around each other and they're singing songs with the soldiers. And there's a story of the power of God. And it wasn't just that it soothed the intellectual convulsions of my mind, I felt it in my heart. My mind still fights back. It says, yes, well, he might be a certain level of spiritual being, but God has this humility, and he might be on a power trip too. Eric said, I reminded him another train story with Baba. Baba's sick. He's on the train. Some man puts his feet up with the soles of his feet toward Baba. In India, you don't do that toward anyone, let alone a master. And the Mandali, of course, they want to, make him stop. And Baba says, let it be. Then the man puts his feet up against Baba's body. And Baba says, let it be. So there's a humility. And boy, I felt that so deeply. But then my mind fought back again. The mind. And the mind said, well, God has a sense of humor. And then Erich tells the story of Baba in the barn at the center. And Harry Florsheim tells a story that's on the risque side, but it's funny. And I guess I won't say who it was in the crowd. Thought to herself, it's so inappropriate that they're just telling this story to the God-man. Anyway, the joke is over, and Baba says, Harry, retell the joke. So-and-so didn't get it. Well, that just tickled my funny bone, and I'm feeling even more that Baba is God. But, of course, my mind fights back some more. But I decide at the end of that day, I'm too weak to go to the tomb. I'm going to go the next day, and I'm just going to pour it all out to Baba. And then I'm going to stay, and I'm going to go back, and I'm going to talk to this man, Erich, who's the wisest man I've ever met, and I wrote that in my journal straight out. And I'm going to throw one by him. I'm going to find what the little catch here is. And it's a wonderful place. You all are wonderful, but this one or two things aren't quite right. See ya. So anyway, I do go to the tomb the next day. And as I mentioned, having these feelings and this experience of the presence and God. And so I'm wondering if that's going to happen to me in the tomb. Well, nothing like that did happen. And I later came to realize that, for me at least, the tomb isn't a place to get, it's a place to give. And but what I did experience in the tomb was like purity. Not dazzling lights, but there was a light of some sort, just like a Vermeer painting kind of light. And in that atmosphere, I told Baba about how I had prayed from the bottom of my heart, and I was drawn here to India. And I'm feeling that I feel the God from you, but I have these doubts, and maybe you're a certain percentage of God, and I want to know, are you 58% or what's the deal here? And all of a sudden, and also just help me, Anyway, I just laid everything out. And I feel that visit to the tomb which of course is the most powerful place in all the universes, the most significant. What can compare to it as a geographical spot and a place for work and to be worked on, and to love and to give everything to Baba. Nothing can compare to it. Anyway, I feel that that gave Baba the key to work with me, opening up there, especially in the Samadhi. And I started reading books, and then I went back and I had a list for Erich. And he said, come sit here, as he would do. And Erich had a way of not only answering your questions, but the question behind your question that you didn't even know you were asking. And yet I never made the mistake, thank God, of making the Mandalese substitute Babas. And they didn't come out with their own teachings or look for any feelings toward them, but rather their mirrors reflected Baba and pointed always toward him. That was my experience. Anyway, so I came back with my list of questions and different people who had influenced me. What did Baba say about Ramana Maharshi? What did he say about Ram Krishna? What did he say about Baba Ram Das? This one and that one. And Erich would say different things about different ones. This one, Sixth Plane Saint. This one, Perfect Master. This one, Spiritual Kindergarten. This one, Baba didn't say. And of course, I don't know anything. And yet somehow it felt like everything he was saying was right, just on some intuitive level. And I had been reading God Speaks. I remember people laughing at me because I had a list, but I was going to get to the bottom of all of this. And then I thought, okay, I said, Erich, you know, every group or discipline, they have their little phrases and cliches. And here people say, you have the phrase Baba lover, and I'm about to say something more. And Erich says, Philip, there are no Baba lovers here. What? He said, we're all just mice trying to catch each other's tails. Baba in his compassion allowed us to call us his lovers. And yes, at our level, we do have love, but real love, the real love, begins on the sixth plane of higher consciousness. There are no Baba lovers here, Philip. Well, it took the wind right out of my sails. I was beginning to maybe understand that this is the path of effacement, as Baba says. And that, as Baba says, humility is as important as utility. But I was a hard nut to crack. I'm deciding to stay a little bit longer, and then I'd say, like, well, it's Mara's birthday on the 22nd, and it's Christmas on the 25th, and I'd stay and stay. And back then, we would stay at little places in town because there was no pilgrim center. But there were places for 11 or 12, I can't remember, people to stay once during their pilgrimage. And you could stay for 4 days, from Monday through Thursday. There was no electricity at Mirabad at that time. And it would be like 2 people here, 3 people there, like that. So I got my 4-day stay. I believe Mani would be the one that would pick people. And if there weren't 11 new people, you could get a second 4-day stay sometimes. Anyway, so I'm staying in what was Baba's interview cabin. And it later became Ted and Janet's living space, and it was expanded. But 3 of us stayed there. And one of the people that I was rooming with had been picking on me because I was a hippie type guy and he was a real straight type guy. And I would take it on the chin, but once I found out I was going to be his roommate, I thought, I've had enough. I'm going to give it back to him. But he turned around and just became humble and opened up. And I thought, oh, Baba is helping make this change in him. And that helped bring me toward Baba. And one of them told me, one of my roommates said that people often have dreams when they're staying in this interview cabin. Anyway, during one of those 4 nights, I woke up in the morning and they said I was talking in my sleep on and off all night long. And I said, oh, well, I didn't know that, and I don't normally talk in my sleep. And I said, but I have something I want to tell you all. I was pretty sure Baba was God, and now this morning I just know that Baba is God in human form, and he's my master. And I felt this whoosh of love come from each of them toward me. And in my mind's eye or heart's eye, I saw an A in front of me. It was like I was a little kid getting an A on my report card. And it was a red A. It was like it was my red letter day. It was, again, Baba's sense of humor. And I just felt all this love in his presence. And I said, but what's this thing about my talking in my sleep all night long? Because I hadn't fully accepted Baba as God until I woke up that morning. He said, and I said, I don't remember dreaming anything. He said, well, all you kept saying were two words over and over throughout the night. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. So, yeah, that's Baba. But the story isn't over yet. And let's see. Yeah, I decided, okay, my life has been turned inside out. Baba has answered my prayers. I found God, and he is in human form. And this is everything and more than I could have imagined. But it's like I'm in a state of, and I'll borrow a term from Darwin, love shock. And I need to assimilate it and be less frenetic about it at the same time. Plus, I'm not ready for this whole obedience thing. It sounds a little like the military or something, and I know it's right. But anyway, I decided I was going to split. And I was going to travel around India, and I was going to do certain things one last time, and also just assimilate my experience. And then I was going to go back home. I was also going to enjoy seeing other spots in India. So anyway, I go to say goodbye to Erich, who had been so helpful to me. And I said, Erich, I'm leaving in a day or two, and I've got some, and I accept Baba, and it's the greatest thing that ever happened to me, but I've also got some karma to work out before I obey Baba. Erich looked like he wanted to throw up, and he just walked away from me. Erich, who had helped me come to Baba in a pretty major way, as a part of that story. I remember, I'm embarrassed to say it, I kind of pulled him by the elbow. I said, no, Erich, I have some karma to work out first, and then I'm going to obey Baba. Again, he looked like I had just punched him in the stomach. And he said, Philip, you just tell yourself that to make yourself feel better about doing what you want to do. Off he goes. Well, my feelings are hurt. There are a couple of other things. It wasn't all feeling his presence type things. But these things, the kicks and the kisses, and the kicks help us grow maybe more than the kisses, even, as Adi would say. But I remember once running up to Erich and saying on the veranda at tea time, saying, Erich, I'm not feeling Baba like I was when I first got here. And Erich looks up like this and he says, Philip, don't love Baba like a Nazi. It's like cold water thrown in my face. And in front of a couple of friends of mine. But I got it. He said, have some decency. Not initially, I didn't get it. Have some decency in your love for Baba. It's sort of like, come on, Baba, I want to feel your presence. I was feeling, now I'm not. And Baba's saying, and Erich is saying, who's the master here? To dance to his tune, whatever it is. So it was a part of the very natural training with Baba through the Mandali. So these things would happen. Anyway, so I'm going to leave the next day, but I've still got this frenetic feeling. And I go to bed, and I've moved from the Dalat Lodge to a new hotel called the Sablok. And I've got my own room, and I get sick as a dog again. And I'm very ill, and I'm in extreme pain, contorting, and I'm freaked out because I don't feel well enough to go out of bed and get some help, even. And fortunately, one of the people that helped in my coming to Baba, Alan Connie, close friend to this day, happened to come by my room, and I said, get me a doctor immediately, I'm really very ill. And he said, give me your symptoms, and I'll give them to Adi, and I'll come back with the medicine. He treats homeopathically. And there were two mildly I couldn't relate to. I didn't understand personality differences and all that kind of thing. And Adi would give these talks, and Adi was very fiery. And during the talk, sometimes he would say, if I were to meet Rajneesh, I would slit his throat. Not that he would literally do that, but, you know, there are a lot of masters that aren't real out there, let me put it that way. But all I'm thinking is, why would he want to kill another master? And the other Madhali I couldn't relate to was Alava. The world will end according to my dream on such and such a date. I didn't realize the childlike innocence and also the other side of Alava, or the other side of Adi. But Baba killed two birds with one stone, because Alan goes up to Adi. Oh, and I'm thinking, oh, this is how these Madhali people make their money, you know? I wonder what the bill's going to be for this homeopathic medicine. Of course, there's no charge. And anyway, so Alan comes back, and Alaba had overheard Alan talking to Adi with my symptoms, and he said, I must take medicine to the boy. And so he comes on his bicycle all the way down with Alan on his bicycle to my place in this bloke. He comes in the room and he says, what, no Baba picture in room? And they're over there, and they had a little card of Baba. It's the same card I first saw of Baba, where he looks like Jesus. I am the ancient one, looking straight at you. And he says, oh, very good. He said, you take medicine. Look at Baba's picture. Repeat his name all the time. You will be on your feet tonight and all better tomorrow. Jai Baba. And I'm thinking, not as sick as I am, buddy, but I'm going to do it. I believe Baba's God, and I'm going to give it a whirl. Well, I was on my feet that night and all better tomorrow. Probably could have given me anything and it would have worked. I don't know. It's whatever. Baba, Baba, Baba. And the freneticness left the next day. I was calm. And I also decided, yes, I'm still going to travel around India. I'm still going to try to disobey. I'm still going to assimilate my experience. But I'm not, after I travel around India some more, I'm going to come back to Mehrabad and Mehrazad. So I get to Pune, and I know that Baba has said, once you've taken me as your master, don't go to other masters. What's the use? And besides, they might give you conflicting orders. So when you found the whole thing, why go for anything else? But I guiltily went to the Rajneesh ashram, partly rationalizing that I would see my friend's friend there. So I go in, and it was like night and day between the two ashrams. There was a very sexual vibe, and they had like different types of therapists and counselors, your bad trip counselor, things like that. And there was a sort of a holier, I would say a hipper than now mentality. And I asked for my friend's friend, Dr. So-and-so, and I remember the woman saying, who? I said, you know, Dr. Smith or whatever her name was. She said, oh, you mean Swami gobbledygook, blah, blah, blah. I said, oh, okay. Anyway, he wasn't there, but I got his address. Later on, the rickshaw driver couldn't find it. Meanwhile, I'm waiting for Rajneesh to come back to the ashram, and I'm reading some stuff in his book and realizing he's stolen some of Baba's phrases, claimed them as his own. And he's also saying a bunch of nonsense in addition. That was my experience. Anyway, so I'm getting turned off, and then all of a sudden people are rushing out this front gate and around the corner because apparently his car is coming, one of his many Rolls Royces, I guess. And should I go and just meet him anyway, or should I just go out the side door and get the hell out? I went out the side door and got the hell out. Tried to find a doctor guy, I couldn't. Beginning to think Baba's behind thwarting my efforts because I'm a little baby and he's protecting me in my disobedience. But I decide I'm going to go down to Goa. And I go on the ship down to Goa, and loving that. Get down there, and there's like a hippie beach, people walking around naked and stuff like that. I might have the order wrong here a little bit, but at any rate, it's an embarrassing tale I'm telling on myself, but maybe it'll be helpful to some people, and it's the truth of what happened. I decided, okay, I know Baba says that unless you're married, don't get involved with sex. And I figured, well, I'll just have one last fling to finish off my karma in that area. So I met this woman, and this woman was from England, and she was on the ship ride down, and she had come over from England to take her close friend out of the Rajneesh ashram because the friend was going crazy with all the stuff that was happening in the Rajneesh ashram. And she was still talking glowingly about Rajneesh, but allowed herself willingly to be taken out. And she would say, oh, Rajneesh, and she was also married. He's so wonderful. For the sake of God, I'll have you make love to other people and foursomes, and he'll have you shave your head. And her head was shaven. All this stuff, and she was tripping, and oh, it's just so sad. Anyway, but her friend was quite sane and normal and not into all that stuff. And we were starting to hit it off, and I figured, okay, tomorrow I'll get involved with her. I got sick again. So you can sort of sense how illness played a good role in my life. And I spent the next 9 days quite ill. And by the time I was better, I remember saying to myself, Goa, naked women, cheap food, beautiful scenery, paradise, so what? Give me dirty, drab and dusty Amanagar, Mehrabad, and Mehrabad. Mani said the women, they nicknamed it dirty, drab, and dusty. I think they were the 3 words. And I left and got that part out of my system, but I still hadn't got the check out other gurus thing completely out of my system. I went up to Delhi, I went to Agra, I went to Sarnath, and I'm assimilating things, and that's nice. But I decide, okay, if I go up to Rishikesh and just walk by some gurus and happen to strike up conversations, that's not the same as going to an ashram and talking to the guru. I'm rationalizing. So I'm in Delhi, and one day I decided to go from Delhi to the train station up to Hardwar, Rishikesh, and just so happened to talk to these alleged yogi types. And what happens is there's 2 train stations in Delhi, and I've gone to the wrong one, and it's too late to get to the other one. And I'm thinking, oh, you're Baba. But the next day I decided I'm going to go to the right train station. And I go to the right train station, but there's a massive traffic jam. I missed the train. I don't give up. I decide to take a bus there. The bus never comes. Still don't give up, but I go a step lower. In India, they have what are called fortune tellers, the equivalent of psychics here, I guess. And so I figure I'll meet one of these people and ask him questions. So I meet such a person, and he's telling me things like what number I'm thinking of or my favorite color. And instead of going, wow, it freaked me out. And then he said, give me a few more rupees and I'll answer your spiritual questions. Guiltily, I give him some more money. He says, you're going to meet a woman, she'll be dressed in orange. That's what the Rajneesh people were. No, that ain't happening. Almost been there and almost done that. Sort of thing. And yes, and you will leave India very soon. No, I'm not leaving India very soon. Yes, you will live on a hill with this woman. No, I will not. So before everything you said was true, the numbers of this, now everything is false. He said, and you will meet your master. And I said, I met my master. And he said, no, your real master. And I yelled at him, I've met my real master, he's Mayor Baba. And I literally ran away from him. And a cloud of depression just descended on me for what I was trying to do. Realizing that Average was right, of course. But I'm feeling very depressed. I'm walking down the street of Delhi, and someone says, Jai Baba! And there is this very dignified Sikh man. I'm wondering how he knew to say Mayor Baba. Well, I had a little button of Baba on my backpack. I went to India just with a little day pack sort of thing, just 10 pounds in it, with the intention of staying for 4 months. So anyway, he says, Mayor Baba, no? I said, yes. And he said, oh, come, let's have dinner together, and we'll meet at a certain time. So that lifted that cloud. And I went, I washed up. He was a carpet salesman on business, under carpet business. He came with his partner, and we had dinner, and he starts saying, oh, you have recently come from Mehrabad and Merazad. How is Sister Mani? How is Uncle Pendu? How is Mera? She is an angel on the earth. So I'm feeling homesick as hell. And meanwhile, the guy says to me, look, I am a Sikh. We only believe in Guru Nanak, in the direct descension, the lineage of gurus. But I met Meher Baba 3 times, and I tell you, he was God in human form. So it was just so delightful. Anyway, at that point, and after trying to disobey Baba, I just traveled around India for a couple more weeks, I think 5 weeks in total. Went back to Mehrabad and Merazad. And before I left for that side trip, I thought I was fully Baba's, but my questions were still like, why did Baba do that? And how come Baba did this? When I returned, it was like, my questions were, what kind of toothpaste did he use? And did he shave with a straight razor or with an electric razor? You know, the questions a lover asks of his beloved. And Mani later confirmed, yeah, you weren't completely baked yet. But anyway, I came back. I'm just going to go way back because I forgot to tell a story. In the process of coming to Baba, I thought I had pretty much come to Baba, but I started to have some doubts. And I thought, I was so embarrassed about it. And I thought, I'll go out to Mehrabad and take it to Baba in the Samadhi. And someone said they were going out to Mehrabad that day. And they were going the opposite direction in the rickshaw. And we stopped for gas. And finally I said, why are we going this way? And she said, well, I told you we're going to Merazad. I had misheard. So I had wanted to go to the tomb and take my woes and doubts about Baba there. And here I'm going to be stuck out in Merazad all day. And the Mandali are not available to talk to on that day. And some of them are at the trust working anyway. So I'm sitting there on the veranda of Mandali Hall, and I see a magazine, and it's the November 1975 Glow. And in it, there's an article. And in the article, Baba says, while I'm attracting the aspirant to me, it's not unusual that it's like a string in my hand and a string in the hand of the aspirant. And after I've pretty much got him, I may relax that. And there's a period of wondering about things. It's all a part of the game I play. And I thought, oh, I can relax about what's happening with me. Everything lifted. And I looked down at that moment, and where I was sitting, there was a pair of sandals. And written in the sandals, it was relax. Maybe it was a name brand or something. And as I looked at him, I thought, oh, Baba's timing, relax, relax. And then Balna too comes by, not knowing what's happening, steps in the sandals, gives me a hug and says, Jai Baba, Philip. And of course, Balna too had a big effect on me. And again, when I was leaving India, that same, I'll get to that in a minute, but something also happened with that relaxed story. So anyway, I come back and I'm soaking up all these stories, and finally it's sort of like, I'm feeling full. I don't know if my little cup can hold any more of this love and everything. And then someone said, oh, in a few days we have to leave. It's March 15th and you have to go home. So that timing was perfect. And when we went to say goodbye, I took a break between hugging the Mandali, and I sat down in a chair, and again, Balna Two's sandals with the word relax in them was there, and again he came by, stepped into sandals and said, Jai Baba, Philip, and we hugged each other. And when I said goodbye to Erich, he happened to be standing in the same spot where I first met him, which is not very normally greeted people. And when I saw Arnavas, she said, will you be coming back next year? And I thought, I'm not the kind of person who makes a lot of money. This was my one pilgrimage, but somehow I thought, oh, I'm going to be coming back. It wasn't the next year, but I had 3 trips in the 70s between 3.5 and 4.5 months, and that was my real solid grounding in Baba, direct relationship with Baba through those years. And I ended up making 21 pilgrimages, total 2 years and 9 months. Always wanted to live in India. Didn't have the health or the money to do so. Was meant to be here in Myrtle Beach, not a not a bad alternative plan at all. And let's see, just a little bit more here. When I came back after my side trip around India, someone new had arrived named Kent Rogers, a cousin of Debbie Nordine. And he also was traveling around India seeking God. He was the same age. He had blonde hair and a beard. He had a red Kelty backpack. He had a North Face sleeping bag, although his was green and mine was blue. He tried to leave and got sick and got stuck there. It was like watching my story unfold on instant replay, and I just kept my lips shut. But I thought I wasn't going to have the same ending, because finally he was going to leave. And we said goodbye, and then he got sick again. And I remember seeing him on Baba's birthday with a big blank grin on his face. And Baba had gotten him. His second pilgrimage in India was my second pilgrimage. His third was my third, and then he died young, actually. But just Baba's, Banatu used to call them coincidences. And Baba would say, see? And then he'd say the word coincidences also has 3 C's in it, and that's a coincidence in and of itself. So I'd like to read something about Mehrabad and Mehrazad. So a year or two before he passed away, Erich recalled a very striking comment of Baba's on the relation between the 2 major sites of his working in this Advent, Mehrabad and Mehrazad. Baba had said they were like his 2 eyes. They exist independently of each other, yet they function jointly to create one image, the image of him. And Erich would add, they are equally important in order to have a clear and sharp image. Just a little bit more here. Okay, a lot of people know I'm fond of saying the following. This is a quote from Shankaracharya, who Baba said was a perfect master, and Baba said that he had been Shankaracharya. Minor incarnation, I don't know. But I find this very uplifting. Shankaracharya said what the 3 greatest things were to have. The first is to have a human form. You have to wait a long time for that to happen. And we've got it. The second thing, most important, of the 3 important things, is to have love for God. And we have that at whatever level. And Baba also said himself, if you love me wholeheartedly at your level, eventually I will take you to my level. And the third thing is to have a master. That's the third most of the 3 important things. And we have the master. We have the master of masters. We have him during the avataric period, which extends for 100 years and a little more, beyond the time of the dropping of his physical body. And then he remains available to us after that as well. And we have him during the end of a cycle of cycles, and there are millions and billions of cycles in a cycle of cycles. And this is, his manifestation will be the greatest at this time. So how fortunate are we? And I'd like to end with this, poetry is a big part of my life. I'd like to end with this little poem that I wrote 22 years ago. It'll be obvious that it's modeled on the Lord's Prayer. And it just kind of came to me. And I like to say that it's for those who aspire to be the slave of the divine beloved. And I call it the slave's prayer. Our Father, who art within us, mercy is your name. May your will be ours, so that this earth becomes our living heaven. Give us this day nothing except you. Forgive us for our wants and what they have created. And may we forgive our wrongdoers. let us not lead ourselves into temptation, but let us follow your lead to salvation. For thine is the highest freedom, the deepest joy, and the perfect love forever. J. Bob.